Everybody, yeah, yay! Enthusiasm, yeah! Is everybody caffeinated? Got some caffeine back in you, some food again, get those bellies nice and full. That's what we're doing. We're just stuffing you guys up. We're just gonna get you full, keep you full. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. Just saying. All right. How do I follow that? I don't know how you follow that, Mark. You're gonna have to figure something out.
I'll make it through.
So carrying on with the trend, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, coming up with some creative ideas to kind of fill in a gap after our next break. The presenters are probably going to be a little pissed at me because I'm probably going to get them to do a panel. So that's just a little, like, get ready, guys. So on that note, I would like to introduce Mark. Mark is from ETP Brainhub, and he works for a company that is very well established inside of the entertainment industry. They do a lot of amazing events. And Mark is, what's your title now? Director. Oh, maybe I should read it on the screen. Mark is the Director of Lighting and Design Services at ETP. So please welcome Mark.
Well, thanks everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit kind of off topic of the theme that we've seen so far today. I'm going to get a little bit more granular and talk about the tools that I use for live event design. It may or may not relate directly to some of the things that we'll see outside on the street for the festival, but a lot of it stems from a lot of the same foundations. So some of the tools that I use, they're my choice. They're not the right way to do it. They're not the wrong way to do it. And you'll see definitely some things that are outside of the box, non-traditional tool sets that give me the results that I need to present designs to clients for bidding purposes or for final production approval. So let me get started, talk a little bit about me real quick, not to, here we go with the keyboard not working. Let's go. Hey, there we go. Awesome. So I have a BFA in theatrical design and technology from Northern Kentucky University School of the Arts. I also have a minor in radio and television. I'm a lighting designer by trade. I think you've kind of heard that theme a little bit today. And that's not necessarily like the path to go for sure. But from a designer standpoint, I have a very long history of lighting design, but because I do a lot of lighting design, I now do multidiscipline design. And I think my exposure to all disciplines have given me the opportunity to be efficient and effective in designing other elements of production. So lighting designer. When I graduated college, I took my first job on Norwegian Cruise Lines. And then after one contract with them, I got a job at Disney Event Productions, Disney World in Orlando. They do all of Disney's special events, anything that is not a show in the park that they do, Disney Event Productions handled. After that, I left, worked at Cirque du Soleil, spent 4 years with Cirque in Orlando, moved out to Vegas, became my own freelancer, my own company, and then eventually getting picked up by, at the time, LMG, which is now parent company is ETP. ETP Brainhub is the technical arm of ETP, which supports all the different divisions of Pixel Evolution in London, LMG here in the States, of NEQ in Baltimore. LMG has a touring division, a show services division, and a systems integration division. And as director, I support lighting, rigging, and design for all of those divisions. And I've been with them for 13 years. And I've been in this industry probably longer than that date up there, but that's all I wanted to put up there. So when I say I'm a multidiscipline designer, like I'm gonna just shout out, like name some of the disciplines that are within live events. Rigging. Lighting. Somebody other than Jeffrey. Yeah. Awesome. I try to do a little bit of interactive, just break it up a little. So yeah, so like when we think about design, it's easy to focus on something like lighting, right? It's easy to focus on Scenic, right? Because we understand that those elements need some thought process on the front end to kind of come up with something that we can build off of. But there is design elements in all of this. And where I put that little everything else bubble, that's a lot of things that fall into that. That could be media design. That could be fire marshal approval drawings. That could be seating layouts. It can be anything that has to go in with the full production aspect of what we call lighting or live design. See, I kind of had a little lighting slip there, right? So it's easy to look at and think, lighting, we do plots for lighting, we do plots for audio, but audio design is like, sound dispersion patterns. Like, are we going to get enough coverage out of the amount of speakers that we put up for this show? Projection studies. Are we going to get the right viewing angle for where this projector is going to go? What lens do I need to use for that projector for that throw distance? Everything kind of needs to be thought about in a full kind of circle of all the disciplines within live production. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of those disciplines and just kind of explain briefly what each one is. I'm not going to go through them all because it's going to get kind of snory. So lighting, right? You look at a picture like this. This is from 2018's Nature One Music Festival in Germany that I would go over with a friend of mine's from Gurdon Design. We designed this rig because it's a giant EDM festival with tens of thousands of attendees that boots and cats underneath this rig, right? But when you look at something like this, it's easy to have a connection, right? We're still trying to build that experience for the attendee. Yeah, they may not be thinking about the design of it. They just think it's cool. But to make that look that way, we have to think about that on the front end, and we have to design that out, and we have to build it into a presentation that we can give, not just approval for the client to go, hey, this is a 95-foot tall cone of truss that is going to be safe, and it's going to be supported over your attendees, and it's going to look amazing, and it's going to look like this. To the technicians who are actually setting it up, going, okay, there's going to be 12 lights around this ring, and there's going to be 18 lights around this ring. So we have to kind of think of the engineering side of it, and we have to think about the conceptual side of it. And with something like this, it's easy to kind of look at and go, okay, yep, that looks cool. What does that look like on paper? Well, this is not the same show, clearly, but because I didn't get the rights to get that plot, so we're just going to go with this one. So a very typical touring plot, right? So this is what we would call just a traditional lighting plot. This is all the information that we need to read to say this is how it gets set up. This is more on the engineering side of things. No client who is really like tech savvy or not tech savvy is going to really care about something like this. This is for us to really get a sense of scope. How do I engineer this? How much power do I need? Where are my cables going to go? Those sorts of things, right? So we have to get onto the granular side of engineered lighting plots. Another aspect of lighting design is previsualization, right? Previsualization is also within content creation, within projection mapping projects. Previsualization is pretty broad, but from a lighting standpoint, when we want to take that concert rig and program most of the show that we're not going to do busking for, we can save so much time by hooking up a lighting console to a 3D model of my rig and program, let's say 90% of it, heck, 50% of it. You just saved so much time on show site because now you can just show up with a thumb drive, plug it into your console, and now you just have to make a couple tweaks. The difference between an engineered lighting plot and this is huge. And there's a lot of work that goes into building a previs rig. And we'll come back to this later in some of the software I'm going to show you. But previs is like I would say it's essential once you start to scale up on the size of the shows that you're working on, and think outside the box. I'm talking about lighting, but previs is really like multidisciplined. So rigging. Nobody really thinks rigging is like sexy when it comes to design. Everybody thinks it's like practical, necessary. But rigging design is like the canvas that everything else builds upon. If you don't have rigging laid out, then you don't have anything to hang your lights on. You don't have an LED wall that can be supported. You don't have possibly audio that gets flown. Rigging is not just from a creative standpoint of building structural elements that need to be safe, but like that safety aspect of rigging is huge. And you really need to have a qualified person that is vetting this. I can, as a non-certified rigger, draw truss all day long, but it doesn't mean anything if it can't actually be hung in the space that you're bringing it into or built, right? You look at something like this. This is an Expo booth for Cardona, and we were only able to pick so many points in this convention center due to where they chose to have the booth. They didn't have any choice. They don't know. They're not looking up into the ceiling going, there's no rigging points. But we have to figure out how to hang 5 LED walls off of this tiny little truss. And there just wasn't enough points to safely hang this. So we had to engineer like, okay, we're going to do a down leg. But if we don't look at that ahead of time, we're putting our equipment and people at risk, right? So engineering this on the front end from the design standpoint is crucial. Then we get into like LED rigging. So LED walls, all the rage, right? We love LED walls. They are heavy and they need to be safely rigged. But clients, as you'll see from some of my next examples, clients will build entire shows around an LED product. So the LED becomes the scenic design sometimes. And they may build like a mask around the LED wall because they want that LED to be a certain shape or something. So they need very tight clearances so they can go back to the scenic designer and go, hey, that header on the top of that LED wall needs to be 6 inches from the truss. So that LED wall cannot hang any lower than 6 inches from the truss. How do we do that? Well, I have to draw and figure out how every little piece of rigging is going to work and fit so we can make that work amongst all the other departments that are going to work with this LED wall, right? So it's easy to think from, oh, I'm an LED guy, I'm going to just hang this wall. You got to be from the design aspect, you have to start to think about how it affects everything along the way. LED. So I just talked about it. LED is like the artist's canvas for a lot of production nowadays. This is our Colossal Cube in Las Vegas studio. This is a 55 by 45 by 25 foot LED AR environment. It has floor, sidewalls, back wall, and there's tiles on the top that are integrated offset with a lighting rig. There is also, you can't really see it because we have it on a separate motor system, but there's ladder truss that comes in and flies in front of the back wall, so you can have light shooting from behind you. This was used in Super Bowl halftime show, commercials, a bunch of different TV like ads and things like that, that when we had it set up, it was constantly in use. But this was also a solution that we pivoted to for COVID, right? I think we all had to kind of like come up with ideas, and this was, hey, use it. And they did. So LED in this sense, right, from a design standpoint, we have to look at it from a creative sense, right? But then you go to something like Sleep Number, right? Doesn't look sexy, but man, it looked cool when it was actually built. But we needed to figure out, hey, they got a king size bed and they want to put it into a full LED box. In concept, that's fine. But how does that get built? Like, how do we know how to hang it? How much trust do we need? Is this safe? People are going to be laying on that bed. But yes, they did. And we need to figure out like how much product do we need and how does it actually get set up. So, when you think into LED, you have to think about what its purpose is and how is it actually going to get put together to get the content in through the client's wishes, right? Then you can do a render, right? So this is a render for a client that wanted a curved LED wall and a scenic set, but they wanted to see what it looked like in their space. So they go, oh, we're thinking maybe like 20 foot, 15 foot. Let's see what it looks like. So we find a raster that their content works on. We build the LED wall. I run it through a rendering client, and I'll talk about this software in a little bit to give them an idea of what it works with in their space. So LED design as a concept is in a scenic piece in this example. And then lastly, Scenic. So we at ETP Brainhub, well, let's just say it this way. LMG does not have their own Scenic company. We have a partner company that does have a Scenic company. But when you deal with large Scenic design, a lot of those companies have their own in-house teams. But sometimes clients want to come to a technical side of it and go, how can you make my exhibit booth look really cool with the technology that you own? A lot of these clients are not technically savvy, and we need to stay on top of technology to be able to not just sell the product, but also coach them into different design ideas. So in this example, it was very simple. They had a booth, they have their branding, but they wanted something in the middle of the booth that would really kind of wow the space. So here's a giant curved LED wall. I know it's kind of hard to tell all of that, but there's a curved LED wall, and that's a curved circular LED header on the top for branding. This is years ago. I'm kind of embarrassed of this render, but you get the idea. Like LED from a scenic standpoint, right? Then you can look at something as simple as like atomic panels, right? It's a very simple way of breaking up the space. You can look at the flags and say, okay, that's another thing that I added in to break up the fact that it would just be drape uplit. I need something separating that camera shot of that presenter on the stage. And by the way, the Cinema 4D guy that holds the phone, like in every render, by the way, like he is like the guy. So you'll see him a lot today. But yeah, so the idea here, right? Just looking at it from a simple, like giving the client different ideas, looking at something to fill the gaps. And then you can look at modularity. So something simple like a modular set that can adjust to whatever the client's needs are. So we can rearrange this and build it 100 different ways in 100 different sizes and put their branding on it. It can be LED, it could be just graphics that we plant on top of it. All of those are opportunities to go back to the client and give them a visual representation of what their show could actually look like. So now I'm going to talk about tools of design. So again, I just want to kind of preface this. These are my tools. I'll tell you about how I use them and the project that I use them on, but they are just my preference. Everything that I'm going to show you, I'm self-taught on. I never took any kind of formal class. I am of the old age enough to go back to do hand drafting when I was in school. So computer drafting didn't come to me until later in life. And once I opened that Pandora's box, it opened up a lot of other opportunities. So yeah, without further ado, I'll just get right into it. So Vectorworks. So Vectorworks is my canvas. Everything that I show you after this starts here. I build everything from the get-go in Vectorworks. I've been using it 15 years or more. I don't know, like before they started doing years. Now, like, remember they had numbers? That's back when I was using it. So I have become very efficient in it. And the reason it's Vectorworks is because I would say this, it's the industry standard when it comes to entertainment live events design. And that's because of the tool sets that it has built in for every aspect of live design. I can draw and drape with a tool. I can draw and truss with a tool. I can drop in lights with a tool. I can drop in stage with a tool. I can keep on going forever because there's a lot of different aspects of what Vectorworks can give me within the software. So Vectorworks, just as a little background, is built with 3 different main kind of customers in mind. So they have Vectorworks Landmark, which is their landscaping side. They have Architect, which is, of course, architectural. Then they have Spotlight, which is the live event side of things. Vectorworks does do a lot of simple rendering built into it. So it can be your one-stop shop for like building a 3D model, making a nice little picture, and then sending it off to the client. For me, I have progressed to where Vectorworks is where I start. And when I want it to look sexy, I put it in something else because I've become that efficient in those other things. And I like the final result of what I get outside of Vectorworks. It's just me. But so this is a EDM stage that I'm time-lapsing, speeding through, right? You'll see this later. But this is going through all the elements, right? So I built the stage. I'm building the risers for the DJ. I'm building the truss. I'm building the lighting arrays. There's about 400 fixtures on this rig. And then when I take it out of here, I add more assets in that third-party program. The best part about it is a lot of these, like, as we talked about projection mapping, I can build a 3D model within here that can then get put into a lot of these mapping programs that can then be used for content creation on the previsualization side of things, right? And so the beauty of what Vectorworks brings is that it is a CAD program in its true itself, but it's also what works in a hybrid workflow. So what that means is for every 3D object that I'm drawing, I'm also drawing a 2D object. So when I go into that top view, I can build that engineering plan that I showed you for like the lighting plot in the same way and still have everything here in 3D ready for a model export. And that saves a lot of time. So that's kind of Vectorworks like thing that they've always had for years, was that they were a hybrid workflow. And this is an example of that. So this is like a 7-minute video. I'm not going to bore you with like the whole build. If you want to see it afterwards, let me know and I'll continue where we left off. So Cinema 4D. So there's the guy with the phone. So when I really wanted to up my game into what I can present to our sales team or to our end client, I needed to find a better way to render. And Cinema was my first foray into, outside of Vectorworks, getting into like real high quality rendering. In my opinion, it was real high quality rendering. Some of these are a little dated, but you get the idea as far as like the difference in what I can actually do in Cinema. Cinema and Vectorworks actually use the same rendering engine for what they actually use to render. It's just when I put it in Cinema, it takes 10 seconds. When I put it in Vectorworks, it takes like 10 minutes, right? So I wanted something that I can control my materials, control my lighting output, control, put in different assets. And there's a lot of different plugins that I can use with Cinema that make the work go faster, right? I can also do, Cinema is like an industry powerhouse when it comes to 3D animation. It's used in film, commercial, TV, all that stuff. I use it for rendering. So when we need to kind of promote that high quality image to a client, Cinema is the tool that I used to use almost exclusively. So Unreal is starting to really get into the game as far as a selling tool for me. I will say for me, the learning curve on Unreal is quite high. So I don't recommend it for everybody. But I'm using this example of Moment Factory. So they're using it in this example for lighting previsualization, right? So they have this demo. It's free. You can download it and watch it and play it and move around the scene. It's really kind of cool. But getting Unreal to start to utilize as a lighting previsualization program is starting to like become something, right? Now with Unreal though, what we here at ETP have been using it for has been virtual production. So there's a lot of programs out there that use Unreal Engine as the rendering engine for this sort of thing. I know a lot of people here use other avenues of it. This is just what I have worked in. Unreal, working with Unreal to do virtual lighting and real-time lighting for virtual production is what kind of got us through COVID, right? But we use a lot of programs like Disguise and Ross Voyager, who all use Unreal as its like main rendering engine. So having to learn it has kind of been a necessity, but it's incredibly powerful. I'm going to skip forward a little bit here if I can. Over here. No, over here. No, it's not going to let me. No. Anyway, so this is another long video that you'll, if you want to see, you can ask me later. So thinking outside the box. Unreal is a gaming engine. That was what it was created for. It has now become like the normal thing for like mainstream television film production. It is like that powerful, right? Well, they make an offshoot called Twinmotion, and it caters to the architectural side of real-time rendering. It's built in Unreal, but Twinmotion kind of favors architectural, and you'll kind of see like from the video, the user interface is really simple to learn, and it's really simple in the sense of I don't have to figure out coding, right? And this is a great like landscape and architectural demo, but that's not what I'm using it for. So I put this in here to kind of show you like what it can do in real time. But what I'm doing is I'm taking my Vectorworks drawings, doing a live export because there's a DataSmith export, which actually takes your drawing from Vectorworks live into Twinmotion. They both can exist at the same time. And as I'm making live changes in Vectorworks, it's syncing those over to Twinmotion at the same time. But here I have all of these amazing assets within Twinmotion that I can then put into my renderings. And not only are they renders, but they're like real time. So I can create a fly-through animation. I could create a VR walkthrough for the client. All of that through a very simple interface. And this is an example of a large show that we were trying to sell for Deloitte, but they wanted to kind of get a sense of like, what does this look like in scope and scale? And sometimes a still image just doesn't give you that really true like understanding of where you are in the space, right? So I like to be able to move around, see the space. Twinmotion is a great tool for that. You'll notice like I'm just changing the leather color of the chairs that I just grabbed out of the asset library. This is another one that you'll see later in a different program, but you know, I can get some volumetric lighting out of Twinmotion. I can control basically almost everything that I need to. There's a little bit of cheating, I'm not gonna lie, because they give you a sky dome, so you need to kind of turn all that off and close yourself into a fake box, and so you don't get any sunlight coming in. But once you do that, everything else is like generated by whatever you have in there, right? So this is that example that I showed you earlier about LED examples, this is just the the walkthrough or the fly-through example that we sent to the client. So my favorite little go-to tool now is Enscape. Enscape, again, is architecturally landscaped focused. But Enscape is a real-time GPU renderer that works as a plugin within Vectorworks. So you install it, you can open it up in a new window. For this demo, I'm just putting it in a small window, but realistically, I'd have that on a whole nother monitor. Everything that I do within the real Vectorworks space happens live within Enscape. Enscape has a massive library of materials, textures, assets that I can import directly into my Vectorworks drawing. And then this fly-through renders in real time. Like I create a camera path. This is a 2K output. It can go up to 8K output. And I can put video content on the LED wall. I can create all the shadows and quality and depth of field and all that sort of stuff. And it just renders immediately. I would think if I go above 2K, maybe my render time would increase by maybe a minute or two, but it's an incredibly powerful tool. And again, this is catered for an architectural or landscaping walkthrough, right? You're going to walk through and see what your building looks like and everything. Well, heck, I can make this work amazingly well for all my live event stuff. This is a walkthrough where the client had a little bit of a lobby area that they wanted to see their branding as they walk through, but then they had seating for a certain amount of people. So they wanted to see, is this room enough space? Where the cameras are going to be located, where is the front of house going to be, and can they see the set in the space? Okay. Does the presenter have a good distance from the LED wall to the edge of the stage? What does all of that look like, in the bigger scope of things? I really like this tool. I really like the assets that they give me, but this is not something that you would traditionally use within live events because they market themselves to a completely different business. This is our Coil studio, our learning center, and our Orlando offices. They wanted to build a learning space, but they wanted to kind of incorporate, these are some vanish LED tiles, and they want to see what that would look like with some Scenic panels behind it. How would that all rig so where we can hide the monitors and hide all that sort of stuff. And I was able to push out this entire drawing and render in about 10 hours. So Enscape. Okay, depends. This is my real-time rendering visualization program of choice. This is new for me, but I've already done one pretty decent sized project on it, but it's great to have in my back pocket. So when you're trying to pitch something, so I use it for two different reasons. So if anybody's familiar with lighting pre-visualization, one of the free tools that you can get out there now is Grandame on 3D, right? So if you're using the Grandame console, you can load up your show into Grandame on 3D without any problems. Not true. And and then you can hook up your lighting console to that computer that's running Grandame 3D and program your whole show. That's what this does, but this does it so much better. So I can hook up a lighting console to this and I can program my entire show. I can record it and use it as a playback. So I don't need a console for my show. I can just use this as the coding that goes out to whatever it is it's controlling. Depends was originally created as a visualizer for fountain programming. So like if you go to the Bellagio and you see fountains and all that stuff, it has a great water renderer in it. So that's what it was originally created for. Then they kind of got into lighting. They got into pyro special effects, cryo. They got into projection. You can put an accurate representation of a projector on a 3D model and see what that would look like within this program. Absolutely. So what we use it for is two sides. We do the previs, right? So I can have my LD sit down with a lighting console, plug it into here. I have my scene from Vectorworks. I put it into Depends. It exports as an MVR, which is coming in from Vectorworks. It keeps all the lighting and information values in. And then within like 2 minutes, I now have a full like space. What this is that Vectorworks, when I went through and I showed you that EDM stage, that's what this is in Depends. So what it is on the left-hand side is the timeline of everything that's happening for this song. So the top green is the audio track. The pink ones are video tracks for the LED wall. And then every little, what looks like keyframes, which they are triggers for all the different 400 lights that are in this show, right? So this was a test to try to understand the program more than anything else. But for a 3-minute song, I was able to build animation tracks on the camera. I was able to build an entire like EDM song. There is an audio track to it, but I muted it because it can kind of get like boots and cats in here, and I don't want you guys to start raving. But the benefit of something like this is you're really giving the client like, here is what it will look like. My cueing is going to be this. My timing is going to be this. And it looks great. I've got an audience with LED RGB wristbands that are completely programmable. I have like all the railings and all the trucks and all the assets to show like, here's where it's going to be on the stage line stage, and it's going to look like this. You get into like some very like, I think right about here, you get into a very close look at, well, there's my DJ, but you get an idea as far as like the fixtures are moving the way they would in real life. Like they spend a lot of time developing in a massive library of just assets. And every asset is specifically built for whatever that light is, or whatever that projector is, or whatever that pyro effect is, or whatever those fireworks are. So Depends is like the last stage that I get to in this whole process. So I don't use it for everything, I'll be honest with you, but it's incredibly powerful. And it's my like, I don't do Unreal for that, even though I showed you an example of it. I use this because it's just so much faster. And the learning curve for this is quite less than Unreal. I'll just put it like that. It's not going to be twin motion easy, but in the end, I think anybody who really kind of understands just computers and timeline editing will pick this up very quickly. And if you want to see this with sound, we can do it afterward. So as I showed you, there's a lot of different tools in my tool bag that I use for designing. Sometimes, like I am in one or all, probably not all, I'll just say one or multiple of these programs almost daily, because I'm pushing out designs for 3 different divisions and 11 different locations around the world, right? And if anyone wants a job, let me know. So, but this isn't the only way to do it, right? Like you are all your own artists, and I don't expect anybody to follow the same path. Find what works for you and get the results that you want, that you feel comfortable presenting to the client. Because when you know like what they're looking for and you know how to get there, then you're already ahead of the game. So again, these are just some of the tools that I use. I would say that 9 times out of 10, I'd say 8 times out of 10, I'm in Vectorworks. Like it starts and ends in Vectorworks, right? But when I really need to push something to a client to sell the item, that's when I start to grow outside of it. And I just have to have that conversation with the client. I think taking away from a lot of the other presenters about like what to look for, how to gauge what the client is feeling to build that in your design, you know what the tool you need to use to get there. So my presentation is really short. So I left a lot of time for questions. So I'm going to open it up for questions, and while it's running, I'm just going to show some slides of some of the work that I've done over the last probably 12 months. So questions, go for it. Yeah, so I guess it really kind of depends on what your goal is for the previs, right? So Vectorworks can tell me exactly what lens I need to hit a distance, right? Like that's simple, but it's important nonetheless, right? I need to know what the raster is going to be. I need to know, what my ratio and pixel density is going to be. Vectorworks can tell me all of that. When it comes to actually seeing a projected image on an object, there's a lot of tools that do that, but the tools that can do it that I showed you would be like Cinema and the Depends program. Unreal, absolutely, but don't ask me how. I'll be honest. But there are a lot of other programs that can do that sort of thing. So.
That 7-minute video, how long was it? Normal speed. How long did it take you to do the principal design of that?
Of the EDM stage, I built that whole thing in about 4 hours. And then when I brought it into Depends, now the Depends side of things took a long time, but I was learning it. So if I would have hooked up a console, recorded my DMX stream into the program, it would have taken me like maybe a day. But that took probably about a month of me going in and putting keynotes on or keyframes on everything in the timeline going, okay, I want that to flash right now. So I literally had to go click, drag, 0.1 second. That's a flash. Yeah, great. And then do that for every fixture. Okay, great. Like it was time consuming, but it was for me to like really get granular into the program because as I said at the start of this, everything is self-taught. So I make a case for my company to purchase the software without like me having any knowledge of it. It's a hard sell, but in the end, like, all I have to do is show that video to 5 of our sales reps. And now I have a market that is going to keep me busy with that program constantly, right? You get 1 or 2 clients that are like, I absolutely need that. And then the other side of it is when I'm not using it, now I have lighting designers who can, rent that in a really powerful computer and do it in real time and pre-program their entire shows. So, and that we have one coming up actually next month, which is going to be a combination of lighting pre-production and video pre-production because we have a 360-degree projection mapped and they want to see the content play. So my LD needs to see the content play at the same time as they're programming. So can absolutely do that in Depends. Yeah.
And Depends will just work as like a queue system then to give DMX out.
Yep. So Depends has modules. So we have the lighting module and the one that can like render module. So you can render up to like 8K fly throughs. They have one called Control, and Control is the output module. Yep. It'll just be ArtNet or ACN. I think it'll do that as just a playback. And I think Synchronorm is the name of the parent company for Depends. And Synchronorm has their own hardware server, just like everybody that makes something like this. So it's basically a super powerful computer that can just, spit out all the data you need. There is an example of end of slideshow. No, I want to show you part of this video that you didn't get to see before when it came to Unreal. And maybe I can skip the video here. Yeah. All right, so if anybody knows Tomorrowland, huge European music festival, right? So maybe I should like go here. Maybe it'll crash and not. I think it actually might. Anyway, so what you see right here, real quick. So the lights that are up there are all the lighting for, so this was a during COVID giant music festival. They green screened in all the DJs, put them behind, you know, in all these amazing sets that they built in Unreal. And then they took the Pence and put a transparent background on it, layered it into all the areas that they were actually building for their camera movements and stuff for Unreal. So all the lighting is the Pence, all the pyro and special effects is the Pence, all the like scene and the fake people and all that stuff, that's all Unreal. So you can use the Pence in a full, this was all live streamed. You can do some pretty massive stuff with it. I got the thing, so it's gonna crash. I'm just letting you know. So I will keep asking questions though. Wah wah.
Yeah, this depends, so you can run Tomorrowland out of the computer without a disk,
Yes.
and you can previsit.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how every set went because, as in with Tomorrowland, there's like 15 different venues right within it, and each DJ has a different theme and yada yada. And I probably have that video here somewhere that I can actually play. But it is a massive. I mean, that's a massive project, you know. So I'm sure that they probably went into a huge lot of pre-production on that for sure. One of these is like the right one. Maybe. This is still us. All right, so you can kind of get a better sense of the scope, right? So these are all green screened performers, but all the lighting is done in one program and all the scenic environment is done in a completely different one. So they previs their video content on all the LED that you see there, which is fake LED, of course, right? But YouTube, Tomorrowland 2020, I think is what it is. And you'll see some behind the scenes of how they kind of created this and brought all the DJs in. It's kind of funny watching DJs like fist pump to like 5 guys with a camera, you know? It's just like, yeah, I'm doing. Yeah, it's neat, but really kind of powerful. And you know, I think the Pence is a you know, it's just my tool of choice when it comes to the lighting previs side of things. So, but yeah, cool. Other questions? Sorry, I'll let this play. Yeah.
Spotlights on the digital folks, like was that kind of a growing moment?
Spotlight on the digital folk as far as yeah. I'm not sure if I'm going to answer your question correctly, so forgive me. But when we came into the virtual side of things, right, it's easy to look at virtual and think all I need is TV studio lighting, right? So you have a bunch of soft lights that are on at a percentage that doesn't blow out whatever it is. It's a green screen, it's an LED wall, whatever. But it never really matched what the content was behind it. So getting into like doing that matching is really kind of where you like I'm putting my lighting designer hat on going, it's annoying. that person's out in the woods with shadows all around him on the floor and all that stuff, but not a single shadow is going over him. Like, that's not real. I need it to be more real in this complete unreal scenario, right? So, you know, we did a test project with Ross Voyager for, like, they do a lot of like esports stuff, and they'll have like a presenter standing on stage, and then some gargoyle with a hammer behind them, like, hey, this is so and so for the game, you know, and they're, you know, that gargoyle has some sort of like hammer that has a light on it that when he swings it, it crosses over the plane of the presenter. So I put a moving light in the corner off the screen, and every time he swung the hammer, we would program not the lighting console, but you can actually control lights in a lot of the, like, this guy's in the media server stuff. So we send the values to the light to pan so that person in the shot gets that glow, right? And I think that's kind of is trying to break that false reality and bring it, you know, more into believable. My pet peeve is shadows. You can't really get good shadows in virtual production without a lot of like pre-production and thought into it. And forget about live. You know, you got to like kind of bake those into the content, but your presenter is never going to be there, like never going to hit the spot that they need to. So you have to find creative ways. So that gets into creative content creation to where it can play to where it's believable. But we have done a lot of AR stages in some of the biggest tech companies up in Northern California and Washington. Not going to name names, but you can guess. And all of them, you know, want that, you know, as realistic as we can make it. And none of them have a traditional studio light in it at all. Every single one of them is like as tight of a circle that we can get around the person to where they're just lit enough that the camera picks them up. Because like, especially now with everything being like an LED, you know, not a green screen, all the light that I put on them is just going to blow out that LED wall. And now your color balance is wrong because we just spent how many hours color balancing the LED wall to the lighting. And if any of that changes, now everything looks green. So I'm not sure if that answers some of it, but feel free to throw back at me. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no worries. I'm sitting on this really bad, like, Windows Explorer folder. So if there's anything you want to see, just let me know. I feel like, hey, check out my file structure. Look at my subfolders. Yeah. Anything else? I'm trying to see if I can find. There's one video that I'll show you, and I know I have it right here. Here. So this is what that came out with. I don't know if this will play. If my computer turns some audio up or not, I don't know. 1 second, sorry. Ooh, that's a little too loud. So this is what is it playing? You can hear it through the projector, that's awesome. And again, this is all just timeline based. So I'm sick of this song. I've heard it so many times. But it gives me the ability to, you know, show a 3-minute song, right? And I came to find out after I made all of this that they now have an actual DJ and not like some guy just. The speakers on the projector are amazing. And what's great about Depends is that their asset of lighting fixtures are all actual representation of what those fixtures can do. So if it has an animation wheel, it will replicate that animation wheel. If it has stock gobos in it, it'll have every single stock gobo in it. You don't have to tweak this at all. It just works. I can't hear it because of the massive bass. So that was the with sound version. So sorry, Eric, go ahead.
So how does that association work then? If you created the basic file in Vectorworks,
Yeah.
how does it know what fixtures you have in Vectorworks and bring it into the
So there's
I'm doing that?
nope. So there's an MVR export option, right? So that takes out your geometry, right? So that's the stage and the truss and all that. And then there's all the fixture data. So Vectorworks knows that like the inside ring is clay packy xylose, right? And then so when I put it into Depends, it crunches all the geometry, and then a little window pops up and goes, "Hey, Vectorworks reads xylose mode 4. What do you want it to be in Depends?" And you go from their drop down menu and go xylose, but they should be mode 6. Click, done. And it'll take a patch. If you spent the time doing a patch in Vectorworks, the patch comes over. So if you've already built that patch in your console, now everything matches. When I went through this process, all the little lights that are shooting out. So each ring has 3 sets of light: an inside ring, an outside ring, and then straight on. The straight on lights I originally had as atomic dots. The rendering time, whenever the atomic dot came on, just made my computer cry. And so what I found was if I just swap them over to, I think they were like RGBA LED pars, that were the same footprint. Now the rendering time is like done. Like it's every time I hit it, it doesn't drop down to like 3 frames per second. It can keep up with it. But this is all GPU based, so of course you need GPU rendering power. This was rendered. This was a screen. No, that was an actual render. But the one that I showed during my presentation is just a screen capture of the UI as it's playing. And to get it to run at a good frames per second, the quality is like turned quite a bit down. So if you take the time to actually do a full like 4K render in it, it'll look amazing. So
Have you gone the step after teaching yourself how to do it without a console? Have you hooked your console up to it and played to see?
next week, yeah, I haven't done it with my copy, but I've done it physically with it before with another like demo show, and it is seamless. Fixture 1 at full boom, lights on, move it, put it in a bally, it's doing the bally. Like it's instantaneous. There is no delay. Just when you have a library of a couple thousand different fixtures, some of them aren't as optimized as others. And so when you get to an obscure one that happens to output and now your rendering time just drops, there's 2 options. You can contact the manufacturer, which I'll be honest, Syncronorm's been great. Like when I did this to actually produce that screen cap, the very first couple effects were from the xylose fixtures, and they had an update to the software. After the update, those fixtures never came on anymore. And so I write them, I go, "Hey, here's my demo file. Can you like fix this?" And they were like, "Yeah, that's weird." And then like 2 days later, a new update for the software comes out and it's fixed. So I've been really happy with them for that. But they have a pretty massive inventory of assets, not just lights too. Like that crowd is procedurally generated, so I'm able to map them wherever I want and paint them, like you can paint them as people. You can have them as close together or as far apart as you want. I made porta potties in the back. I made hills and trees, just because I wanted to put more assets in there to see like how it would perform in real world scenarios. So, anything else? Yeah.
Do you have a choice when you're applying textures and that and pulling materials? Can you import from other more customized programs? So if you were going to do matte painting in Photoshop, for example, and you want to put it on as a texture,
Yep.
is that an option?
Yep. You can.
Versus choosing prefab architectural.
Are you speaking specifically for that software or just anything?
That one I was thinking of.
Yeah. So there are a couple like rules you need to follow with them. You know, they build on a certain texture model, so you want to stay within those kind of, you know, parameters, let's just say. But all of them have been like, I can bring in transparencies, I can bring in layer masks, I can bring in anything like that that I would do in any other 3D program. I can bring in through there. They like everything is. I still have a what's the term? I'm blanking on it. When you have a normal layer and you have a luminance layer and you have key. No, the type of material object. No, I don't remember. Anyway, it's the type of it's the type of where your texture has like 4 different pieces to it. You have the material, you have the opacity layer, you have the what's that? Oh, I thought somebody chimed in and answered it because I can't. My brain. So, but yes, all of that exists like in something as robust as Cinema or 3D Studio or like Photoshop layering. All of that would work perfectly fine in that. I do find that there are a couple little annoyances to get the light to bounce off of like an object. Sometimes you have to use a 3D object that is built within Depends, or you've imported into Depends on its own, not part of a project. So what I cheat, and I sometimes will redo the floor as a plane and then bring it in flat on top of like the stage deck tool that I used in Vectorworks, right? So sometimes you just like, I am my own worst enemy because I tend to be a perfectionist. And that project, if I was under a deadline, I would have no more hair, you know, because like I wanted to spend so much time. I think artists in general tend to want it to be as perfect as it is that it can be for them. But in the real world, we don't have that luxury. So all those other projects that I showed you all had deadlines. This is the only one where I was like, I'm going to take as much time as I can to learn it. But now that I've learned it, I'm 10 times faster. So anything else? Awesome. Jeffrey. Yeah.